from PRX.
Friends beyond the binary, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you're going to hear a rare thing. I think this is the first time, or maybe the second or third time, because we're putting a couple of these out this subscriber summer for you, of recorded live shows I've done in front of a live audience. And so these will be a little bit looser. I will be singing a little bit, I think. I'm not sure about this version. But I've listened to them. They're pretty well edited and everything. So, but it is a little bit different. But it's a different version of the show that you may find you enjoy. And again, with we want to make sure the show is here for you, the people that need it in the summertime. Because believe it or not, if you're listening in the summer, either you're new and you're kind of in the middle of something, you're going through something, or you're kind of a super listener. Those are the people that listen in the summertime. And we're committed to you, right? And if you want to be a part of that commitment so that we could stay committed to you next year and beyond and to other people, now's the time to support the show back. And here's a couple ways you could do that. Sleep With Me podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are the things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations. Hey, everybody, it's Scoots. I'm talking about tonight's sponsor, Helix Sleep. And if you don't have a Helix mattress in your life, you got to think about taking the quiz at helixsleep.com/sleep. I've been sleeping in my Helix probably longer than you've been listening to this podcast. And I love my bed so much. I have a move coming up, and I'm trying to decide because I have to move in a couple different stages just due to things outside of my control. And I know I'm going to be in my apartment, but most of my stuff's going to be gone. And I'm like, should I keep my Helix there and then buy another Helix for my next destination, or should I pay to have that Helix moved, but I don't want to be without it because I don't think I'll be able to sleep without it because I love sleeping in my Helix. And I know it'll be super easy if I take the Helix quiz at helixsleep.com/sleep. Maybe my needs and feel preferences have changed, so I could see what my options are. I could choose between a Luxe mattress, a Helix Elite, or just, whatever comes up in my search. I know I'll have choices. So the question is, do you have that kind of relationship with your mattress that you don't want to be without it? Because if you don't, what are you waiting for, right? You could have a Helix shipped straight to your door free of charge and get testing it out. But the first thing you need to do is just take that quiz, because Helix has you and your needs in mind, your feel preferences. How do you like to sleep? How does your partner like to sleep? So it is time for you to get a new bed. Because trust me, this summer, I do not want to be without my Helix mattress. And Helix has got an amazing deal lined up for you. Go to helixsleep.com/sleep for 27% off site-wide during their 4th of July sale happening now. This offer is exclusive for listeners to Sleep With Me. That's helixsleep.com/sleep for this exclusive 4th of July sale offer. That's 27% off site-wide. helixsleep.com/sleep. Thanks, everybody. All right, everybody, Scoots here, and here's the listener I'm looking for. I don't know if are you listening to me and hearing me, or are you going to tune me out? Okay, great, because that's what I'm looking. Somebody who can listen and hear me. Now, if you're new, you're occasional listener, you're temporary listener, you don't need to listen anymore. But you're listening and hearing me right now. Do you listen 4 nights a week or more? So the podcast is a pretty huge part of your week, right? Whether it's your work week, your school week, your parenting week, your week of existing as a human being in this world. Oh boy. 4 nights a week, right? So does the show make your life better? Those nights you listen to it 4 or more nights a week? Because it sounds like Sleep With Me is a part of your bedtime routine. And I'd love for your help at keeping it going. You that's specifically listening and hearing me right now, join us on Sleep With Me Plus. It's designed for people that listen to a lot of episodes. And it's designed so we can keep making a lot of episodes and keep the variety of the show coming. You'll get ad-free episodes. You'll get story-only full episodes. episodes. You'll get story-only episodes without ads. You'll get bonus episodes. And you can support the show at any of those 3 levels we have right now. Any level helps. Any amount of time that you're a listener and listening 4 or 5, 6, 7 nights a week that you're supporting the show. You're not just paying for your consumption of the show, but you're helping out people who can't afford to support the show too, or who just tune me out and ignore me. The people that aren't listening, or the people like, yeah, the podcast is valuable to me, but one day I'll help the show out. I get the sense you're not like that. You realize like how good you're gonna feel, and believe me, the listening is just amazing on Sleep With Me Plus. But if Sleep With Me is a part of your bedtime routine 4 or more nights a week, and if you are listening to me, please consider supporting the show at sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. Oh, Mystery Bard, a lot of people help out on the show. Who are they?
Posty poster son sounds like an earful. Wrote the theme song. Edits episodes too. Carl W. the legend. Also edits episodes. Ashley, Kenny, Scotty, Jennifer. Runner. Eric and the team at Astound are on the website. I am the Mystery Bard. I do the lullabies, yeah. I do commissions at JonathanMann.net. I'll write a song for you. Any reason at all. You can tell me the story and I'll make it personal. You see the kindness shine straight on through when the listeners form their own Facebook group. Keith, Stacy, Sarah, Julie, and Jennifer. These are your moderators. Get support dear Scooter on Patreon. Buy the merch and support the sponsors. You can find anything you want at sleepwithmepodcast.com. And we're so proud that we could dance. Rusty Biscuit, Lois, Anna like banana. Leah does the transcript.
Thanks, Mystery Bard. Don't forget, if you're looking for access to Sleep With Me Plus, to access to ad-free episodes, but you're not in a financial position to support the show, you can earn those for free by referring people to free podcasts at our referral program, sleepwithmepodcast.com/refer. If you're like, yeah, I can't afford to support the show, but I really want some of that sweet, sweet bonus content on Sleep With Me Plus, sign up for our referral program and send me an email. Thanks, everybody. What do you say we slow it down and get on with the show? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and friends beyond the binary, it's time for the podcaster who's going to be keeping time on a pink rubber clock. And believe me, there's some part of my brain will be worrying about it, but the rest of me will be here trying to keep that part of my brain and the rest of you calm, because it's time for Sleep With Me, the podcast that puts you to sleep. And we do it with a bedtime story. Oh, wait, should I start with the credits, or should I... Well, we do it with a bedtime story. Tonight will be a live bedtime story, and I'll be here in your ears in a different way than normal for some of you, and maybe this is your first time listening. Sleep With Me is made possible by the hard work of Chris Posty Posterson from Sounds Like an Earful Studios, Carl W. They both edit episodes. Chris does our theme music. Scotty and Jennifer and Kenny are on our artwork. Who else? Eric and the team at Astound are on our website. Jonathan Mann is our mystery bard. He's on our lullabies. We have a listener Facebook group. I want to thank the moderators. Julie and Jennifer, Stacy and Sarah, Laura and Keith. And I think that's it. Let's get on with the show. Hey, are you up all night tossing, turning, mind racing, trouble getting to sleep, trouble staying asleep? Well, welcome. This is Sleep With Me, the podcast that puts you to sleep. We do it with a bedtime story. All you need to do is get in bed, turn out the lights, and press play. I'm going to do the rest. What I'm going to attempt to do is create a safe place where you could set aside whatever's keeping you awake or whatever's on your mind. It could be thoughts about the day. It could be thoughts about 6th grade. It could be thoughts about next week. It could be feelings, physical sensations. Whatever's keeping you awake, I'd like to take your mind off of that. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to send my voice across the deep, dark night, across this small, comfortable conference room. And I'm going to use lulling, soothing, creaky dulcet tones, pointless meanders, superfluous dialogue get mixed up and missteps, a lot of uhs, extra words, confusion, all to keep you company and to be your friend, to be a distraction. And a lot of times people wonder, well, what made you want to start a sleep podcast? Why tell bedtime stories to adults? There's all these people out there. There's all these statistics every day. 1 out of 5 Americans doesn't sleep enough. And we hear all these reports on the news or wherever we consume copious amounts of articles unnecessarily, and there's all these words about too much information about the impact of sleeplessness on us, and then a lot of the solutions, at least for me, never seem to work. But still, why does this podcast help anybody? Why does it work? And I think it works. I think explaining it maybe is a story in itself. And it's not the most bedtime of stories, but we'll get to the bedtime story. Hey, everybody, this is Scoots again. And since this is a live show, I have a much different intro than a normal show. So that's the end of the intro, just for the sake of the story flow. With a live show, it goes a little bit differently than that. Now, if you're new to the show or anything, this is part of our subscriber summer, where we give a sample of all the other stuff we do throughout the year. But don't worry, starting last year, we committed to putting out extra episodes. So there'll be there's a new episode out this week, and then there'll be a standard episode, format episode, of a different style. From earlier in the history of the podcast. So we just keep a lot of variety coming out. But these live shows are actually something we've never put out to the public before. And because I hadn't really listened closely and been like, man, this quality is not bad. And it really gives insight into a different style of the podcast. And some people fall asleep during the live shows. Some people don't. But people are curious about them. And this story is one of the more popular stories, but it's a little bit different. So it's kind of funny to be like, oh, wait, I like this story. This is a little different take on it. And it really delves into the history of the podcast and the making of it. So, yeah, I just wanted to give you a heads up. So thanks so much. And if you're new, keep coming back. It takes a few tries to get used to this show. It's here to help you in the deep, dark night. Regular listeners, thanks so much for coming back, too. And if you're new or you're only going through something, the show's here for you. You don't have to worry about it. If Sleep With Me makes your life better, if it's a part of your life on a regular basis and you want to be a part of it being here for you and for everybody else, you want all those good feelings that come with, hey, this podcast makes my life better. How can I help? Here's a couple ways you could do that. All right, everybody, we're talking about tonight's sponsor, Quince. And I don't know how you like to spend your nights, but I got to ask you about your bedding and your sheets, right? How do you feel about them? Because Quince has options for you. They've got buttery soft sheets like the ones I got for my daughter to take to college. They have those crisp percale sheets. And now I'm looking at the hype of the Quince European linen, and I'm thinking, Scoots, it might be time to up your sheet game even more. Quince European linen sheets are light, breathable, and super soft with that perfectly lived-in vibe. Woven from 100% European flax linen, they have that heirloom quality that gets softer with each wash. And as I said, the same thing goes for their ultra plush duvets, quilts, pillows, and shams too. Quince has everything you need to level up your bed. But I didn't even get to the best part. Just like Quince's clothing, their bedding is half the cost of similar brands. By partnering with top artisans, Quince cuts out the cost to the middle person and passes the savings on to us. And Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. Now, like I said, I have the Quince percale gingham bedding right now in my bed, but wow. This European flax linen really sounds nice for summertime. And I already, in my shopping cart on Quince, I have a black short sleeve linen shirt. So I might as well add the bedding to it. Let your bed match the season with cool, relaxed bedding from Quince. Go to quince.com/sleep to get free shipping and 365-day returns on your next order. That's Quince. QUINCE.com/sleep to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/sleep. Thanks, everybody. Hey, everybody, Scoots here. This is Scoots. Just wanted to give you a quick interlude here. We're going to return to the live show where Scoots kind of gives, or me, talking about myself in the third or fourth person. I don't even know. But this is where it's a fictional story, but it also delves into the real roots of the podcast and the depths of where it comes from. And one of my first times dealing with sleeplessness as a kid. So I hope you enjoy it. And it is a bit different than a normal episode. But I'm glad to be here and to try to be here in times in the summer when things are a little bit different, but to try to keep stuff coming out for you and everybody else that needs it. So thanks so much. Take it away, Scoots. But, once upon a time, there was a little boy named Andy. And Andy couldn't sleep. Andy was in 5th and 6th grade, and suddenly he went from being able to sleep like most kids to sleep just leaving his life. And it was mostly because he was worried about school and he was having trouble at school. And he would spend the nights thinking about what was going to happen the next day and if he could figure out a way to behave and stay in line so he wouldn't get in trouble. And then he would worry about being tired and then he would worry about the whole, well, if I'm thinking about falling asleep, how am I ever going to fall asleep? And it would go on and on and on and on and on. And Andy's parents and the other teachers and all the other adults in his life, they started to notice. They said, why can't you sleep? I don't know. Well, why don't you try thinking of something nice? And that didn't work. And I said, well, why don't you try drinking some warm milk? And that didn't work. And they said, well, try breathing. If you try to focus on your breath instead of worrying about school, you'll be able to sleep. And none of these things helped. They just made Andy feel more alone. Like, I guess I have to deal with this on my own. I guess nobody gets it. And it was lonely. And I'm sure if you're here, you can identify with that, or someone in your life can. And it was isolating. Andy shared a room with his brother just feet away, but it still felt like it just this lonely plain, this endless plain to walk at night. And it really wore Andy down. And then he was at recess, and he was playing on the domed. They used to have these domes. Now they're made of rope. I think back then they were made of metal, and you could climb on them. And his classmates said, "What's you can't sleep." What my older brother does? He listens to this comedy radio show on Sunday nights called Dr. Demento, and we've got a Dr. Demento fan here, and Andy tuned in, and it was on Sunday nights from 9 to 11, and when you're in 5th grade and you're staying up from 9 to 11, it feels dangerous and rebellious, and even though this was on radio, there was something that felt illicit in this comedy and these parody songs and Weird Al and people singing about fish heads, roly-poly fish heads. And Andy would sit there and he felt like he was a part of something. And he felt like someone was there, sitting there with him, like a friend. And he never fell asleep. But he felt good. He wasn't worrying about school. And this show swept him away for a few hours. And then Andy kind of decided to grow up. And at some point he forgot about Dr. Demento. And he kind of started to take life seriously. And the sleeplessness came back, and it became a up and down road, where He was trying to find any other way he could fall asleep, and he forgot about Dr. Demento, and he forgot about little Andy even. He started to call himself Drew, and he said, well, I'm a grown-up. I take life seriously. I'm a realist. And every once in a while, Andy would say, well, what about Dr. Demento? That was really fun, that part. Say, no, Andy, we're trying to do life here. We're trying to be adults. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, we could do something fun. No. And Drew would go back to his life, and he still felt like, what am I doing? Like, I'm this little kid. I don't know how to be an adult. And I'm still kind of in touch with that darkness, that pain from the sleeplessness. And he was lost for a while. And it wasn't so great either. But Andy kept trying. He said, come on, let's do something fun. We could do stuff. There's possibilities. And Drew kept forgetting about it. And then one day, Drew had a daughter. And things started to change. His daughter was not a great sleeper, as most children tend to be. And so he would have to sit on this yoga ball with his daughter, and he would bounce her up and down, and he would sing her songs and tell her stories and goof around. And there was something about it that made him feel safe too, with his daughter there in his arms. And then he kind of went back around to screwing around and trying to pretend to be a grown-up. But then one day, he walked by himself in the mirror, and looking back at him was this tired, haggard person. And that was like, what are you doing? And there was just something about that eye contact in the mirror. And it triggered these thoughts about, geez, I'm trying to raise this daughter, and I'm trying to raise her to be strong, and that she could do whatever she wants to do, and to empower her to make her own choices. But when she turns like 16 or she turns 18, she's going to be like, what were you giving me all that advice for? Like, you don't believe it. Like, why were you telling me to try when you never did? And there was something about it, even though it wasn't real and even though it was only imaginary, that shook me. And I started to think about it. Well, what is it? What am I going to regret? Is it not being seriousness? Like, is it not taking adulthood serious? Is it not being grown up enough? Or is it something else? And I did start to change, and I thought about little Andy and my daughter and how I would treat them. And I finally started to listen. I said, hey, not at first. Andy said, well, what about, we're putting your daughter to sleep. What if we could put adults to sleep? I said, no, that's embarrassing. You're going to say, wait, tell me more. Well, we could tell bedtime stories for grown-ups. Well, no, that would be a bit, we can't possibly do that. Oh, no, we could just tell goofy stories. No. I don't think so. And this went on for a couple of years. And at some point, I had this project that just didn't work out, a creative project, and I had time set aside for it. And I said, Andy, what about that idea you had about the bedtime story podcast? And he said, yeah, I think we could do it. We should start making it. We should start putting it out, and we'll start putting people to sleep. Just like when Dr. Demento was there for us, when we felt all alone. It felt like Dr. Demento was there, sitting at our side, just there to keep us company, just there to make us laugh, just there to be our friend. And there was a community of other people listening in at the same time. We didn't know them, but they were listening into the story too. And I started making this podcast, and I started to realize that I'm not the only one that can't sleep, that I'm not alone, and that it feels really lonely, and that it feels really isolating, because it is, but that it's not this all-encompassing loneliness, that it's not this permanent state. It's just like, that's how the night can feel. And that when someone sits there with you, like, and says, hey, you can't sleep, that must really suck. let me sit here and let me keep you company. Let me take your mind off of stuff. That's a lot different than when the adult said, well, just drink some milk. Like, what's wrong? What do you mean you can't sleep? There must be something wrong with the way you think or the way you're dealing with it. No, it sucks. And sometimes we just want someone to be there. Sometimes we just want someone to distract us. And that's kind of what I've tried to do with the podcast is to do that. And the way I do it is I send my voice across the deep, dark night, the lulling, soothing, creaky, dulcet tones, the pointless meanders, the superfluous tangents. And in a weird way, what I've learned by making the show is that you can go back and you can revisit things and you can take a look at the past and you can revisit it with this softness. And it got me thinking, like, about one thing is that's hard for me, even as an adult now, is my hair. Like I don't know how many people regularly listen to podcasts, but I don't have human hair. Like, I was born with something, and you can see it. I've let it grow out just for tonight, just for this show. But I have something more akin to fur. I have no natural parts, and my dad always said, you have animal fur. You don't have hair. And first, when I was a little kid, I had a bowl cut, which I think was the easiest way to cut kids' hair at the time. But my hair is like so straight and so thin that it would just fall down, and they would just cut it along my bangs and then cut it along the back of my head. And for a kid in grammar school, that's not too bad. But once you get into the prepubescent ages, haircuts become a different story. And so as I started to hit puberty, I started to be like, well, what am I going to do about this hair? And I embarked on a lot of experiments. I tried to force parts on the left and the right. I tried to force some middle parts. I tried different, like shaving my head. I tried it was a failed experiment at greasing my hair. What was some other? At one point, a couple of my classmates were like, "You got to stop with the grease. Like, it's too much." So I tried all these different haircuts, and nothing ever worked. And I remember a group of my friends and we would go to this barber, Frank the barber, and Frank would cut everybody's hair. And most of my friends had pretty good hair. Most of my siblings had pretty good hair. So for me, it was always like this tense situation. I would go in to get the haircut, and I'd be like, okay, if this is going to be the time that Frank gets it right, this is going to be the one where I really finally get a good haircut. And it would never happen. And Frank was actually like a very demonstrative barber. He would be yelling, and he had this. He had very curly hair, which this was the 80s. And I mean, I guess it was an acceptable hairstyle back then. And I'm not sure if it was natural or perm, but he would be yelling about my cowlicks, and he'd be talking about how my hair was impossible. And then one time, I don't know if I was in like 7th or 8th grade, it might have even been in high school. Frank, he tried to take this fatherly role with me, and he was cutting my hair. And he, most of the time it was like a shared delusion. He would pretend to try to cut my hair, and I would be like, yeah, like look in the mirror, and I would try not to, and then I'd be like, oh, great, this is a great job. And then I'd just get home. I'd be like, okay, oh, well, maybe next time. And I would fantasize about having this rocking haircut. But this time, something changed in Frank, and he said, he got close to me, and he said, you know what I think we should do? I think you should grow your hair out, and I think we should give you a perm. And I was like, wait, what? And he was like, yeah. He goes, this will get rid of all this straightness. He hated how straight my hair was. Like I said, he hated the cowlicks because he'd be cutting it and they'd be sticking up even as he was doing it. And he said, and he must have known from the look in my face that I was like, even I know this is a bad idea. But he said, no, it'll only be curly for a little while. And then and he goes, and you'll have a nice wavy head of hair. And I sat there, and I could tell he was being genuine, like that he wanted to help, that he wanted to give me this hair like his, I guess. And he seemed like a confident guy. He seemed pretty happy. He was always smiling. And, it was his shop. And I said, okay, let me think about it and go home. And I was like, what is this a good idea? I mean, he's an adult. I'm a kid. I mean, is this some sort of hope he's giving me? And then this little part of my brain like tapped me on the shoulder and was like, dude, like, look at his hair and then imagine it on you. Like, it doesn't work. Like, there's no way you could do it. Like, you're not tight and curly like him. It's just not a thing. And I said, okay. But it was like a day. I said, okay, next time I went, I said, no, Frank, I don't want a perm. I don't want to talk about it. And he said, okay, it's your mistake. And I think like when you watch a lot of movies or you read a lot of science fiction, things talk about like when universes, that there's an endless amount of universes. And when we make choices, that there's another parallel universe where the other choice is taking place. And this has just been this thing running it. I said, what if I had said yes? Like, what would my life have been like if I had said, yes, Frank, give me a perm. I want a perm. And by the way, perm has kind of fallen out of parlance. This was actually, at CVS, perm kits are going very well. This is a perm kit, but for permanent. I think that's what it stands for. Precisely right by Ogilvy. And this one says it has new fresh scent. And anyone that's parent ever got a perm, you can still smell the perm smell through the box. But I always wondered, I said, well, geez, Frank, what if I had said yes to Frank? What if I had said yes to getting this perm? Would my life have turned out differently? And so, like, I don't know, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I got obsessed about it, and I started driving by particle accelerators, and I started going on the internet into, the deep web, and I was looking up, is it like magic, people that actually believe in man? And I started to contact these people, and I started to tell them, I said, well, I need to go back. I need to try to figure this out. Like, I want to see if I could get back to this alternative reality and see what my life would be like with a perm. And most of the theoretical physicists were like, this is a terrible idea. Like, do you understand anything about physics or something? And I said, no, I understand. Like, I'm trying to figure out what my life would be like. And they said, well, why don't you just get a perm now? And I said, you don't understand. The damage is already done. Like I want to get back to before. And they said, it's a bad idea. Even if it was possible, we don't recommend it. And then I went and met with like women stirring, eye of nude and things. And I said, what about, what do you think? Let's look in this cauldron and see. And they said, no. It pretends bad things. Like, don't do it. And I stuck my head in the cauldron. Then I stuck my head in a particle accelerator. And then I lied in bed one day. And I started to think, and I started to I said, let's go take this one step. Like, where would I start with this life with a perm? Like, if I could kick it off, would I kick it off at 16? Like, where would I start? And when you think about the power of this podcast, the power of healing, I said, well, maybe I should go back and I should heal something. And so I thought about the first time I really had trouble at school was in first grade. And my teacher was Sister Iron. And this one day, Sister Iron had us making our own flashcards with those things like the cards and glue, and we were cutting things out. And, I like at that school was known as Mr. Messy because I was so messy. So already I was having trouble with the glue and gluing the pictures on the flashcards. And we were doing a stack of them. And then we were supposed to put them in these plastic sandwich bags. And I don't know what I was doing, but I was sitting there and I was putting the cards in order. And then I was putting them in this sandwich bag. And something came over me. And I guess as a kid, I watched like way too many cartoons. So I was like thinking of cartoons and when people blow things up and they keep blowing and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And so I was overcome with this childhood curiosity. So I started blowing up the plastic sandwich bag and blowing it and blowing it. And then I guess and this is with the cards in there, and I smashed the bag. And just like
most of my bad choices. It's always like this 1 in a million thing. So it must have been like a perfectly defective bag and a perfect blow of all time, because the bag explodes like a sonic boom and the cards like fly all over this first grade classroom. And Sister Iron, she got the shock of her life, and she like gasps, and then she flies into like a feverish berating of me, and she's just very, very upset, and she's like telling me blah blah blah, just use your non-sleepy imagination, and she's going off, and it's way out of proportion, and in front of the whole class she says, your punishment is going to be to put the bag back together. And I was like the bag was like in tatters, and then I'm like in tears, and it was this whole thing. And so I was lying there in bed, and I was thinking about these. I was like, what do these theoretical physicists know anyway? Like, I need to go. Like, if I could go back there, like if I could be in that moment with a permanent haircut, like with this perm, like what would my life be like? And I started to think about. I mean, I was hoping that all the other stuff I did like had set me off, and I started to sink in, and I started to kind of let the power of the podcast, the power of the cauldron, the power of the particle accelerators carry me into that classroom. And there I was back there again. And I was sitting there, putting the cards together, gluing them, cutting them off. And I was like, yeah, like, hey, Jesus, yeah, see my cards? I'm doing pretty good here, huh? Like, yeah, I've got it. I'm making a little cartoon here in the corner, on the right corner here. And yeah, I've got them all in order. And actually, like, I'm working on a new... we better be quiet, because Sister's talking right now. She's talking about putting it... And I said, I'm so distracted, but I just want to touch... And I felt my head, and I had this giant locks of very, very curly hair. And it felt good. And I was stroking the curls. And I said, man, this... And then I started to look at the plastic bag, and I said, oh, I wonder, I said, sorry, Suze, I'm getting distracted here, and I something's coming over me, and I grabbed the bag, and I blew it up, and I popped it, and just like in the other memory, Sister started yelling, and I said, whoa, Sister's... And then I reached up, and I stuck my finger on one of the curls, and I twirled it. And I felt a little calmer. I said, wow, Sister's very upset. She's really. And I said, excuse me, Sister. You seem to be yelling very loudly. Yeah, I know I popped that. Okay, you're still... Sister, how many cups of coffee did you have today? Okay, that made you more angry. I was just trying to distract you, Sister. Like, so you could calm down. I shouldn't tell you to calm down? No, Sister... I mean, I realized I popped the bag, and that was a poor choice. It was a poor choice I made. I was just curious, and I popped the bag. I didn't know it would be such a distraction. I didn't realize it would make such a loud popping noise. So I'm sorry about that, Sister, but it's not okay to yell at me like this right now. And I think you might be frightening the other kids in class, Sister. Why don't you take a don't tell you to sit down? Okay, Sister. Class, why does everybody else put their heads down and take a breath? Sister, I'm just a first grader here, and I'm just telling you I accidentally popped this bag, and it was a mistake. And actually, Sister, I'm willing to accept the consequences for my... So the consequences would be to put the bag back together. Okay, Sister. You want me to reassemble a plastic bag with scotch tape? Okay. Well, Sister, just let me, if you don't mind if I put a couple holes in your argument, but taking the tape to reassemble a plastic bag has a couple of possible downsides. One, if I did a really good job, the inside of the bag would be sticky, and it would ruin my flashcards. And if I did a bad job, the outside of the bag would be sticky and stick to everything else at my desk. Also, Sister, I don't know if you've been tracking me at this school, But as soon as I'm done with these flashcards, they're either going to go in my desk or my backpack, and they're going to be covered in milk or candy or juice within the next 25 minutes. So I don't think the bag's not going to help anyway. Also, I don't know if this is a cost efficiency issue, but the Scotch tape costs more than plastic bag. Okay. Yeah, sister. I don't know if you're trying to, I realize maybe you're trying to make an example of me, and I'm trying to make an example here. It's just, sister. Okay, sister's going to sit down and look out the window. That's a good idea, sister. Okay, class. That was pretty intense, huh? Class, I'm sorry I popped that bag. It was, something came over me. It made a pretty loud noise. I don't know, did it frighten anybody? Oh, Willie, oh no, you were looking at the birds. Okay. Yeah, it was a bad idea, and I, as I said to sister, it was wrong. It really interrupted class time. And now we're just going to wait for recess here. Everybody put your heads on your desk. And we just washed our desks this morning, so they have that clean school desk smell. So go ahead and smell your desk and breathe it in. There's that nice humidity of your face on the desk. Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, and so I guess that would be one of the memories I would go back and fix. But then I started thinking about this idea from the physicists of butterfly wings, and I started to realize that I was caught in this memory. And so the next thing I knew, I was sitting outside at recess, and I was sitting there, and I was actually poofing my curls, recovering. I said, man, that was intense with the sister yelling, holy mackerel. And then some of my classmates started to come over. I said, hey guys, I'm just sitting I'm just puffing my curls. That was pretty rough. Sister was screaming. And sorry about that. I guess I triggered her, but it's not okay for her to yell at us like that, right? It's not, right? Well, you're glad I stood up to her. Oh, hey, what's up? What are you, in kindergarten? The kindergartners, that teacher is the best. Oh, she's not the best? Do you want me to talk to your teacher? And you're in third grade? Your teacher yelled at you? Okay. Well, there's a lot of yelling going on at this school. There's okay. No, I just told the teacher, I said, it's not accept. I think it's called assertiveness. I don't know. I'm just a first grader. What do I know? But you just say, well, there's also how to apologize. That's important too. You just, you want me to do it? What are you in? Fourth graders, do you even have recess right now? What are you doing? Oh, no, you heard about what I did? No, I didn't. All I said was, please stop yelling, something like that. I don't know. Hold on, yeah, well, I touched my hair and it just calmed me down. I think they might call that self-soothing or something, but I've never experienced it till today. It was good. Sixth graders, what are you doing out here? You're not, wait, is this the whole school out here? What are you guys doing? You heard I'm ending school? No, I'm not ending school. I just said, Sister Iron, it's not okay to scream at kids. Right. No, not right. We're going to go back. We're never going to go back to school. No, I didn't. How did you get those signs that say that? What do you, no, please don't turn over the trash cans. Please don't use the trash cans as drums. No, we've got to go back to school. It's just a matter of, it's just maintaining our boundaries. I can teach you guys this right now today when we don't go back to school ever again. No. Okay. Oh boy. This could be the butterfly wings. And then all these kids were gathered in the playground, and they said, what are we going to do next? And we're never going back to school. And I said, well, we should probably go back to school at some point. And they said, well, let's march. And they said, where are we going to march? And I said, well, the closest place I know about is Burger King. So I said, we're marching on Burger King. So this entire grammar school, we start marching down the street, and the kids are chanting. Meanwhile, as we're marching out of the parking lot, all the teachers are looking in the window, and they're pointing at me. And Sister Iron's there, and she still looks pretty mad. But I touched my curls, and I said, okay, oof. Yeah, okay, it's going to be okay. So all of these kids, we march down to the Burger King, and we go in, and the kids, they take it over. We throw all the adults out and chase them out of the room. And the kids just start, making ice cream and eating things and playing games. And I guess this was like some pre-internet meme or something, because and maybe this is the power of the butterfly wings, because then kids started walking out of school across Syracuse, New York, where this took place, and going and taking over Burger Kings. And then within hours, it started to spread through the state. And then by the end of the day, every K through 6th grade school was empty, and the kids were living in Burger Kings. And pretty quickly, obviously, they needed a scapegoat. So the news and the police, they started showing up, and they were demanding to speak with me. And I said, okay, I'll talk to you. You all seem pretty upset. Because none of the kids are in school. Oh, and it was news to me. I said, oh, none of the kids in the entire country are in school. Okay, well, I can see why you'd be upset. Like, and they just start yelling. And the Burger King franchisees were yelling. They said, "Call off your hordes. We need our businesses back." And I said, I didn't do anything. Like, I just I just told, it's just not okay to yell. And they kept yelling. And I said, you know what? You're not listening to me. I was just trying to tell Sister Iron it's not okay to yell at children, and now you're yelling at me too. This isn't okay. And there's political people, authority figures. We'll just put it in that broad scope. And I said, you know what? We're done talking. We went back in the Burger King. We closed the door. And for all the things people say about kids, this was a pretty civil version of anarchy. Like, a lot of stomach aches from overconsumption of ice cream and soda. But once that got tapped out, it was like the older kids were taking care of the younger kids. It wasn't the most healthiest of environment. And then every couple hours, the adults would come, and then they would come by with a group of parents, and they would call me out, and the parents would say, "What about little Billy? Bring him home." And I'd say, "Billy's fine." And they say, "What are your demands?" And I say, I don't know. And I'd ask the kids, and they would, and it quickly was like no one could communicate. I mean, I was only in 1st grade. I was like, how am I supposed to? And then I would touch my curls. I say, okay, it's going to be okay. Let's just see this through. Let's just see it through. And then they said, you know what? We're calling in the National Guard. We're going to take all these kids out of the Burger Kings. And I said, the kindergarten? You're going to take kindergartners out of Burger Kings for taking and 5th, 4th, little kids. I said, come on, let's work this out. He said, please just find a neutral party, and I could talk to the neutral party, and we could find a way to make this right. Like, this doesn't need to be such a drama. And they said, what do you mean? You pulled all these kids out of school and you took over the Burger King. And they started calling us the Children of the Corn, which was a movie at the time, like where there was children and they were up to no good. And I said, we're not children of the corn. We're just upset kids. We're just this is a healthy expression of our boundaries. Like, don't you want us to be assertive when we grow up? They said, no. So I said, all right, once you have a neutral party, I'll meet with you on behalf of everybody. And finally, after a couple days, they relented. And things were still going pretty good at the Burger Kings. We were eating, I was trying to get the kids to eat, tomato slices and lettuce slices and just eggs without all the other crap. But they said, okay, we have a neutral party for you to meet with to resolve this situation. So we're going to call you in. And so I went, and they had this RV set up outside of the Burger King. And this was like back when the Burger Kings had like greenhouses on the front of it. I don't know what purpose they served, but all the kids' faces were pressed against the greenhouse as I went outside. And I got in this RV, and I said, okay. And they said, oh, there's a conference room in there. Just go in there, and you can wait for the neutral party to meet with them. So I sat down, and then, did some curl twirls, some curl bumps. And I said, okay, we're going to work this out. All the kids will go home. I'll probably get in trouble, but it'll be okay. It's going to be okay. And then into the room walks Sister Iron. And one thing I didn't mention about Sister Iron is this was back in the 80s. She had the transition little glasses, and this was like version 1.0. So she came in from the outside, and her glasses were still in sunglass mode, which I always found very intimidating when teachers had that. I don't know why. So I was already on intimidation mode. But then she sat down across from me, and I said, "Leave us alone. We'll figure this out." And I said, "Sister, I'm sorry again. I don't know." And she said, "You know what? I'm sorry." She goes, "I lost my temper." She goes, "I have other stuff going on." And she goes, "I really went off on you." And I go, "You know what? I shouldn't have popped the bag." And she goes, "Well, you know what? I shouldn't have yelled at you because you're a kid." And I said, "Well, thank you, sister. I think I can work something out." And she goes, "But there's something strange about this." And I said, "What do you mean, sister?" And she said, "Well, after I started looking out the window, I started replaying everything that was happening over and over again." And she goes, "The way you were talking to me and the words you were using, the way you were standing up to me," she goes, "It was like I had deja vu." She goes, "It was like," she goes, "Children don't talk like that. There's just something off." And I said, "No, sister." I said, I just trying to help you, it's a little interpersonal management." I go, "I'm not an expert. I'm just a kid, sister. I'm just didn't want to be yelled at, I guess." And she goes, "No, it's something else." And she goes, "What kind of child is allowed to chemically alter their hair at first grade?" And I said, I said, "I don't know, sister." And she said, she goes, "That's what it is." She goes, "There's something in your hair." She goes, "Something ominous." And she goes, she started, just like a sister, she said, she started saying, "Oh, demonada, oh." And I said, "Sister, I'm not evil. Like this, I was just standing up to you." And then she started yelling, she said, "Oh, this is a," she goes, and quoting stuff that wasn't even accurate. I said, "Sister, you're taking that out of context, anyway." But so I left. I said, "You know what? I'm not going to be treated like this. My hair and my eye are not evil, and my hair is very calming, and I can even gently wave it and rub it like this." And I went back to the Burger King, and I was like, the kids could see it on my face, I think. I said, "We're in a bit of a pickle." I kept that to myself. And I was like, how are we going to fix this? What are we going to do? And I said, "Okay, everybody," I said, "why don't we talk about going home? What do you guys think about it?" They said, "No, we're never going back to school." And they'd shout, "Curls, curls, curls, curls." And then they were like, "We want to be like you." And they'd sent out other kids. And I guess this had gone on citywide, and they had burgled home perm kits from stores everywhere off all of the shelves, especially the CVS in Alameda, because they only had one in stock. It could be still going on. But so they had all these perm kits, and they said, "We want to," and I said, "No." I said, "You cannot give yourselves perms this is going to be, I'll definitely be in trouble." And they said, "But," and I said, "Okay, if you wait to do the perms and you think about going home," I said, "everybody can get a perm that listens to me and stays calm and doesn't do anything rash and doesn't get themselves a perm. Why try to figure this out? I promise." And they said, okay. And so then I said, "I got to go for a walk, and I got to figure out what to do," because so I walked around, and I was like, "Man, how am I going to fix this?" And every time I got down, I just said, "Okay, whew, feels good." And I'd twang. I've never had. It felt good to finally be able to twang a curl, and they'd say, "Oh yeah." And then I was walking not that far from the Burger King, and I heard this crying. It was a man's crying, like a weeping. And I went over, and there was this guy kind of sitting there. And I said, "Sir, are you okay?" And he said, "Oh, no, everything's gone. It's all gone. It's terrible." And I said, "What's the matter, sir? Sir, let me help you." He said, "Oh, there's nothing you could do to help me." And I said, "Well, yeah." I said, "Here, come here. Stand up. Let's go sit on this bench here, and we'll sit." And then I looked at him, and there was something off about him, And I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And I said, yes, sir. Like, tell me what's happening. He said, he goes, I've lost everything. He goes, my business, my friends, my reputation. And I said, oh, no. And then I figured out what was wrong is that he was like a 55-year-old guy, and he had a bowl cut. And it didn't look right on him. It was like this thin, limp hair, like just flat against his head. And I said, man, no offense, but I've never seen a worse haircut on somebody in my whole life. And he was like, have you looked in the mirror? He goes, you got a perm. And I said, I haven't looked in the mirror. And then I said, but I don't care. Like, I rubbed my curls again. And I said, well, I'm Andy. Like, who are you? And he said, I'm Frank. And I said, no, God, no. And I said, Frank the barber. And he said, Frank the barber. And I said, what are you doing here? What happened? And he goes, I don't know. He said, I had this successful business. Everything was going good. And I felt like my life was in order. And he said, one day I was cutting this woman's hair, and it wasn't going well. And when I showed it to her, she started yelling at me. And she said, you're going to put every piece of hair back on my head right the way it was. And she insisted that I glue the hair back on her head. And he goes, and I was crying and whimpering as she's berating me in front of all of the other customers. And she's just yelling. And I said, Frank, that sounds terrible. I said, was this a nun? And he goes, yes. I said, okay, that makes sense. Like, and I said, don't you have like a bad haircut speech ready to go for I go, I've heard it before. Oh, don't worry. He goes, yeah. Oh, just get home, give it a couple days, look at it in the mirror. It's going to grow back. Look great in 2 days. And I said, why didn't you tell her your bad haircut speech? And he goes, I don't know. He goes, I used to feel like I could stand up for myself, but there was just something. And he goes, and I go, it's weird because usually your spirit gets broken when you're a kid, not when you're 55. And he goes, but that's it. He goes, that's it. He goes, my partners left me. My customers refused to get their hair cut with me ever again. And he goes, and this has just happened in the past 3 days. And I said, yeah, believe me, I believe it. And then he put his head on my shoulder and he kept crying. And I said, poor Frank. And then I touched it and I pushed the curls. And I thought about it and I said, oh boy. This is like one of these, again, where the universe is part kind of thing. And I said, I said, listen, Frank, it's been good seeing you. It sounds like you've had a rough time, but I got a Burger King full of kids to get through, get these kids back home. And then he says, it just seems like this isn't the way things should be. And it got me. And I said, oh, man. And I said, come on, Frank. And I picked him up and we went back into Burger King. And the kids were like looking at him like, what's with this bowl cut? And I said, don't look too hard. It's his hair. It's his natural hair. Maybe he was born with fur. And we got Frank and we laid him under the ice cream machine. And I said, give him 20 cc's of vanilla stat. And we poured ice cream in his mouth. And the kids danced around Frank. And then I had some ice cream. And meanwhile, I looked up and all the kids had not listened to me and given one another perms. So the entire Burger King's like full of kids running around in perms. And some of their perms had turned green because they jumped in swimming pools somewhere. Like there's a legend that if you get in a pool after perming your hair, it'll turn green. And this turns out it's true. And so I was like, oh boy, I'm going to be in even more trouble. And I was like, okay, there's got to be some way to fix this. And I said, all right, kids, gather around. And I said, you guys, we got to, and then I was looking at this, couldn't keep my straight. I was like, every time I looked at this room full of kids with perms, I was just stunned. It was not a good look. But it was also very fun. I said, you guys, it's like the cast of Annie or something. But I said, okay, guys, we all have to go home. And, Frank here, he's been through a lot. You've all been through a lot. Your parents miss you, and I'm sure there's some part of you that misses your parents or wherever you call home. Something that you miss. Maybe it's a blanket, maybe it's your bed, maybe it's a stuffed animal, maybe it's a radio you listen to. And I want you to go home. I want you to think about this thing you miss and think about going back home and enjoying it, and that your family will be there and they'll be glad to see you. And, we do have to go to school, but I want you all to remember what it feels like. Everybody go ahead and run your hand through your curls. Some of you did a pretty terrible job on your perms, by the way, but run your hands through it. Because when I think about curls, I think about potential energy. I think about it being wound up and ready to sprung or something. And I don't know, I didn't study physics, kids, but feel the buoyancy, feel it lifting you. And I want you to remember that. I want you to remember that even when you don't have curls, the potential energy is still there. It's spiraling in your heads, and it's there to comfort you. And when you need to have some comfort, if a teacher, and you could say, you know what, it's not okay to yell at me. And if you need that extra reassurance, I just want you to touch your curls. And they might not be there, but they will be. And meanwhile, Frank's crying next to me. And the kids were kind of like, okay. And I think a lot of them wanted to go home. And they started to talk about the things they missed. And then I said, okay, kids, you're going to have to avert your eyes. And I said, Frank, are you ready? And he said, for what? And then I touched our hairs together, and Frank started to spiral, and there was like this bright, flashing, powerful light, and he started to spin inside my curls, and the universe just started to spin. There was probably, I don't know if there was thunder and lightning, and Frank started to float away, and I started to float away, and just like in 80s movies, our hairs were returned to our heads, and we were returned to our proper places. And I was returned to my bed there, and I was lying there. And I reached up and I touched my fur, and I said, okay, at least I don't have a bowl cut right now. I have fur, but I could feel the power of the curls there, and I could feel it reassuring me. And I did feel something move. I did feel the butterfly wings from the past that while, in one universe I totally created anarchy and mayhem, in mine I said, wait a second, yeah, if I can remember it's okay to be treated with dignity and respect, that I deserve it, and that I'm just a first grader, I'll be okay. And then I was back at school the next day, and I was out there on the playground, sitting there, touching my fur, imagining it was curls. I was pretending it was slinkies, actually, and I was pretending my curls were, and the kids were like, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm pretending my curls are slinkies. And they said, you don't have curls. Quit being weird. And I said, well, it's okay. You know what? I'm just enjoying myself. And then I looked up, and Sister Iron walked out of the door, and she was carrying a box with her things in it. And she looked at me, and she said, you know what, I'm sorry. I've decided I don't want to teach children anymore. And she walked off. And then not 2 minutes later, Frank the barber walks out, and he winks at me, and then he goes, bump. He does like this curl, bump, bump. And then he strolls off like happy as a clam. And I guess the moral of the story is, one, perms are powerful things. That's why they're called that's why it's permanent, even though it's not actually permanent. And that sometimes you can go back, and you could take a ponder, and you could take a trip into another universe, and you can't totally change things, but you can make a little bit of a difference. Everybody, this is Scoots with a tuck you in message. So if you're still hearing me and listening to me, I hope this show is a part of your life, and it brings you comfort, even when it can't help you fall asleep, or maybe most nights it keeps you company,
helps you fall asleep, distracts you, your boyfriend, you know. And if the show does make your life better, makes your life a little bit easier, even in the depths of the night, like right now when we're just hanging out and plenty of episodes ready to go, I hope you'll consider supporting the show back. You know, Sleep With Me Plus is how we're able to be here night after night after night, and the listeners who support the show at any level for any amount of time, the show is a regular part of your life. And you could do that at sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. And if you're chilling with me now today, why not try it out right now? You could try a 7-day trial, get all the bonus content set up tomorrow, see what you think, take 5-6 days. If it isn't the best way you've listened to the show, you know, there's like an entire podcast full of ad-free full episodes. There's an entire podcast full of story-only episodes. Those also don't have ads. And then there's a bonus podcast full of really, really cool stuff. And if you're a boyfriend or a boy best, you also get a podcast full of all-night episodes and all intro episodes. So please think about it. If you say, no, I can't support the show right now, I could still use your vote yes to keep making the show. Because just moving on from this message, if you're listening to me and you're saying, no, I'm not going to do anything, that's a no for me to keep making the show. And that's just a reality. The show is at a point right now where without the support of the listeners, we can't keep going. So if you can't support the show financially, you have two options. If you still want to be a part of something, you want access to ad-free episodes, you want the show to be here next year, the year after that, join the referral program at sleepwithmepodcast.com/refer and refer people to the free podcast. You'll get rewarded for it. Their lives will be better because you'll be helping them out. And it'll be a huge, huge boost to the show. It's way better to support the show through the referral program than telling me, yeah, one day Scoots will support the podcast financially, but now right now it just doesn't work. I'd rather you support the show right now through the referral program so we can keep making the show. So please consider that. Or just decide you're not going to support the show and fill out the form. You say, no, I'm not. I want you to keep making the show. Yes. I am a super listener. Yes. But I don't want to support the show financially. And I don't want to do any, like, help out via the referral program. I don't want to help out, but I do want you to keep making it. And I have a good reason for it. You probably have a good reason for it. Fill out the form at sleepwithmepodcast.com/no thank you. Because if we get 1,500 people in the referral program and then 1,500 people or something that say, nah, I want you to keep making it, but I'm not going to support it. It says to me that I should find a way to keep making this free podcast, even if it's going to be tough, because there's people willing to spread the word about the show, and there's people who are willing to say, yes, keep making it. I'm not going to support it, but keep making it. It's important enough for me. It's important enough to me that I took the time to make a choice and say, no, I'm not going to support it, which is 1,000 times more powerful than just tuning me out or ignoring me, or saying, yeah, I'll help the podcast one day, or I'll say no one day. That day may never, Sleep With Me might not make it to that day without one of those three actions. If you take one of those three actions, you could have full confidence that not only are you a super listener, but you're a super listener that's invested your time back into the podcast and makes your life better. Thanks. And now we got the audio news, which we haven't done in a while. So this is what we got coming out on Sleep With Me Plus. A lot of this stuff will be coming out in the ad-supported feed as well. 1357 was a balcony brick building episode as part of the Orlando Park Stop fundraiser for the Trevor Project. Then we had Ray covering Horizons, the extinct Epcot attraction. That was also in as part of the Orlando Park Stop fundraiser. Let's see. We had a repeat of a classic episode, Hamlet with Brainbots. That's a really good one. Where I got out of the house. Great British Bake Off 6, Japanese Week. Then Bernie returns to the show after a long absence, even for a recording he never showed up to. And he does his reinterpretation of the story I told. So you could either sleep through it or wonder what Bernie's version is. That's Cat on Yarn. Then a classic TNG episode, Fistful of Datas, or Datas, you know. Then Bessos 11, Big Farm in the Sky, Bessos 11. Then something 2, I can't read my handwriting. Friend 2? No, Fox 2? Huh, interesting. An episode. Oh, Frankie and Victor, part 2. Then Jenny, the new username generator, one of my favorite episodes I've ever done. And then a 4th of July all intro episode. That's what we got coming up. But we're also deep into subscriber summer. So if you listen on Sleep With Me Plus, if you're a Sleep With Me Plus subscriber and you're listening to this, one, if you ever need any help at all, just send an email to our support team, support@supercast.com. But also all those episodes are going to be in the ad-free full episode feed and the story-only feed. So all those are going to be coming out. What else we got? So if you're a Boar friend or a Boar bestie, you have the all intro all night feed. There's an all intro that comes out on June 5th. June 12th, the all night Boredom Institute episode. And they're called all nights, but they're around 4 hours long just because of the file sizes. We can't make them any longer than that. And then an all intro episode comes out after that. And then in the bonus feed, subscriber summer is in effect. So in the bonus feed, we got Posty 189 came out June 11th. Oh, no, not June 11th. June 11th, first subscriber summer episode, I think, comes out. Archie McPhee catalog. I think I read through 3 different Archie McPhee catalogs. Then Posty 190. Then Ray on a balcony in Anaheim. Holy cow, I can't wait for that. Right, Ray? And then either Frank episode 12 or episode 14, depending on which level you support the show at. So a lot of great stuff. If you support the show on Sleep With Me Plus and you're hearing this, thank you so much. Could not do it without you. Remember, you could always get a hold of support@supercast.com. Make sure you are either on our Discord or subscribe to the Sleep With Me Plus newsletter. You've gotten we've been sending out emails about it. And, yeah, you can always reach out to me anytime through the contact form on our website. Anybody can. Can't do without all of you. I'm happy to be here to put you to sleep. And thanks so much for listening, and good night.